if you can find a contractor who doesn't mind if you hang out and learn a couple things and, maybe go do those dump runs or Home Depot runs for them, that keeps them working longer. And then you get this first world experience where you get to see how it's done. And there is so much value to that.
You're checking out the Investor Shed podcast with Nick Beveridge and Jeremy Kitchen. They're on the path to financial freedom and they're taking their community with them. Stay tuned for the best free real estate investing advice on the internet.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Investor Shed podcast. I am your co-host for the day, Jeremy Kitchen, here with my other lovely co-host, the Nicholas Beveridge. Nick, how are we doing today?
Doing great, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing so good, my friend. A little bit smoky looking outside, but we got a great day for us. Speaking of great day, I think we have a really cool episode this time, Nick. What do you think?
I think it's pretty amazing. We talk mostly to the newbies out there, don't we?
We do. So we don't have a guest on this episode. This is just Nick and I kind of riffing back and forth. I think with this season, we are going to have a few more episodes like this where we just kind of dive into a topic and get you the do's and don'ts of what you should be doing. So this one is what you should be doing before you invest in real estate.
Yes. And before we get into that, people should be grabbing their V8, shouldn't they?
They should be grabbing their V8. Are you talking about just a regular V8 or a V8 Energy?
No, oh gosh. I haven't had a V8 Energy, have you?
Yes, they're tasty.
Are they? Okay, I only have like the really gross V8 drinks. I still have a few from like a couple of years ago, but
yeah,
every time I drink, I'm like, I'm so healthy.
Oh man, I could do anything I want today. And with our health, obviously, when we drink a healthy thing, that allows us to do unhealthy things later throughout the day because life is all about balance.
Balance, everybody.
And we're going to help you balance if you're a newer investor to get your foundation all set up so you can be the best you can possibly be.
Hope you guys enjoy this. We've actually heard feedback recently that people actually really enjoy just the episodes without guests. So we're going to do some more of those. Hope you guys enjoy. Yeah. And stay tuned and give us a comment if you don't mind. Somebody comment out there? We never get those.
Should we do a giveaway for comments?
Yeah. If you give us a comment on one of our platforms, we're going to like it.
There's your giveaway. we bring value here, ladies and gentlemen. So stay tuned and enjoy.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to a very special episode of the Investor Shed podcast, where we don't even want to bother with a guest and we want to talk directly to you, the newer real estate investor. What do you think, Jeremy?
I think you're right with that, Nick. First of all, good day, everyone. Happy to be here. Yeah, like what Nick said, what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about what you should be doing before you invest in real estate.
Yes, what you should be doing before you invest. We'll say that 3 more times in this episode, I believe, right?
Yeah, we have it on the schedule. We're going to say it 3 more times because we have a 5-time max of saying what you should do before you invest. I only said it half, so we're good.
Yeah, halves don't count. Halves don't count.
That's what our editors say. But yeah, let's kind of dive right into this, Nick. Obviously, I've got kind of an outline for the show, and we just kind of jump in with each other and, fill in the gaps that we're missing with this. When it comes to investing in real estate, I personally think the first thing you should be doing is you should really be investing in yourself. And what I mean by that is, just fill your little head with knowledge. There's plenty of resources out there online. There's Nick's free real estate investor meetups, which happen first Thursday every month at the Keller Williams office in Coeur d'Alene. If you're in the Coeur d'Alene area, it is a great place to go network and learn from other real estate investors doing this at a high level specifically. So it's a really good resource to put in your tool belt for sure.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, you really got to invest in yourself and really research before you dive into this, because investing in real estate is obviously, a proven way to build wealth. However, I mean, you should take, like what Warren Buffett says is the very first rule of investing is don't lose money. And the number 2 rule is don't lose money. That's him. That's him saying that. So take it to heart. What he means by that is when you do take a loss, you've got to make so much more money to recover from that loss than if you would have just played it safe to begin with.
Right. And the thing about investing in general is that, yes, it is easy to make money, but it is also easy to lose money. And I don't think a lot of people know that, honestly. There's a glorified side to this whole investing thing where you see all these people on TV who never make mistakes, and even when they make all these mistakes, they somehow make $1 million on their flip, right? It's just not like that in the real world for people trying to get into this business.
Yeah. And a lot of people consider, flipping properties as real estate investing, and you are somewhat, but not really. I mean, you're speculating. You're not taking long-term capital gains. You're doing short-term capital gains, and you're hoping to make a profit on selling something versus investing and keeping with it. Now, it is actually pretty hard to lose money if that's your initial intention, is to keep something long-term. However, you can still lose if you're not cash flowing. And that's another famous guy, Robert Kiyosaki, who, he wrote a book called Cash Flow. And if you're not cash flowing on an investment, it's hard to buy more, right?
Right. Cash Flow Quadrant, is that the book you're speaking of, Nick?
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, it's just, there's a lot to this business. And like I said, it is glorified in the media for what you can do. But I really think the best way to get started is to immerse yourself in the culture, right? Become someone who invests. And people who invest, they invest their time wisely, for sure. That's the first thing I think they do. They invest their time. And they build relationships, because this is a business where you need other people to succeed.
Yes. And Robert Kiyosaki actually made a board game called Cash Flow. If nobody's ever heard of that, I'm sure a lot of you have heard of it, but if you haven't heard of it, I would highly recommend getting the game. They're kind of expensive. You can get them all over the place. Amazon, you can buy them used. They were actually like the most expensive board game at one point on the planet, but it's like Monopoly on steroids, but it teaches you the fundamentals of real estate investing and investing in stocks and all this stuff. And it's all about cash flow and managing your budget and having a net positive cash flow at the end of the day, whatever your next move is.
Right. And to touch on your point just a little bit earlier, Nick, I know you said flipping isn't, technically a real estate investment. For this episode, I think I'm just going to go on a limb and say, yes, it is. Because you are investing in real estate, whether it's short-term or long-term, right? You can flip a property. You don't have to flip a property in 6 months. You can flip a property in 3 years. But you're still invested in a real estate asset at the end of the day, either temporarily or permanently.
Right, but if your intentions are to keep it long-term, I'm just saying it's really hard to lose money over time.
Oh, and I agree with you there, for sure. So,
yeah.
Yep, I think that's definitely the first thing you should do. You should get yourself invested in this culture and just learn, because there's so many different ways to make money in real estate investing. It's kind of overwhelming at times, to be honest with you. Even I get a shiny coin syndrome, or whatever it's called recently, right? Where you start chasing something. Shiny object syndrome. Yes, excuse me. Where you start chasing something because it sounds good, and then you get diverted because a new thing comes out or a new strategy comes out you haven't heard of yet. And it kind of diverts you from your goal at the same time. So, with investing with yourself, I would say get hyper-focused on the one thing that you want to do with real estate investing. Do you want to flip properties? That's awesome. Talk to flippers. Figure out how that works, right? Do you want to do hard money lending? Awesome. Great. Hang out with hard money lenders. Just get really focused on the one thing that you think is going to work really well for you in this industry.
I think the reason why you brought up the shiny coin syndrome is because maybe you've been playing Switch all weekend with your nephew, and maybe there is some Mario that you had to play, and that's actually a good analogy. I mean, if you're not just running to the finish line and you're just trying to get every single coin that's in the game, you might die or run out of time.
That's true. That's a really good analogy. Yeah, I was playing Switch with my nephew all weekend, so yeah, maybe the coin was that for sure. We weren't actually playing Mario, but we did play a little bit of Smash Bros. So.
Okay, sorry. Shiny coin syndrome.
Shiny coin, shiny object, same thing. The coins are shiny, the objects are shiny.
So if you're out there struggling, let's say you don't have, you don't even own your own home. I'm going to recommend that you start there. It's a great place to start. Buy something that you're going to have to spend money on anyway. Like if you're already spending money on rent, why not buy a house that has the potential to eventually put money in your pocket? I mean, it will month after month as you're making the mortgage payment, you're going to be paying down that principal. If you're paying rent, all that money is going to somebody else.
I couldn't agree with you more. And honestly, yes, I do think if you are going to be investing, the first thing you should really be looking at is your primary residence. Just with, like you said, when you're paying down your mortgage, you're putting that money back in your pocket, your metaphorical pocket, so to say. It's just coming back in the form of equity, which allows you to do more projects later. So essentially, you're paying into basically a fund, as long as appreciation keeps happening, where you can utilize this fund for a cash out refi, tax free later, get a HELOC, and do other investments that way. It's just, at least for me anyway, like that was the biggest way I could get started in real estate investing, was just utilizing my network and utilizing my equity. So
Yeah. And if you go down that route of starting with your primary residence, I mean, consider one of these big three things. Consider the house that you're buying, is it going to cash flow if you move out of it and stick a renter in there? If you're just buying a single family residence that you're going to move into, please make sure that the payment is going to be able to be paid by the market rents. And if it's not, maybe consider getting roommates or buy a duplex, triplex, or fourplex, because you may not know this, but with most owner-occupied financing, you can buy, like with a very low down payment, as little as 5%, 3.5%. If you're VA eligible, you could be 0% down. You had the opportunity still out there to get multifamily, 4 units or under. 5 units and over is considered commercial. So we're talking residential here. Anything 4 units or under is residential, and you should be able to get lending easier actually on a duplex, triplex, or fourplex than a single family home, because then your lender can use the potential income or the income from the other units to help qualify you for that loan.
I think that's really great, Nick. I think I think a new loan product just came out recently too, where, like you're saying, with the 4 unit properties, up to 4 unit, excuse me, it's just a minimum of 5% down, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
Yeah, so that's actually new for investors. I'm talking just primary, your house hacking, you're buying a duplex or triplex or fourplex to move into and live there. Now those low down payment options have been out there for a while for those. What's pretty new this month from Fannie Mae is that they're now offering for investors as little as 5% down on multifamily up to 4 units. And this is a very new program, so things may change. It may not completely accurate, but I've heard it from 2 different sources now on the Bigger Pockets podcast, and then our latest meetup in Sandpoint, where that Fannie Mae is wanting to make it a little bit easier for people to buy multifamily right now.
I think that's a great thing for sure. And just to clarify, Stu, so when you say investors, that means you would not be occupying the property, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, your intentions don't have to be to move into the property. And I could be wrong on that. I'm sorry if I'm wrong on that, but this is a new guideline.
Sure. And if you have any questions on that, just talk to your local mortgage lender, to be honest with you, and they will give you all the clarifications you need on that. Like Nick was saying, it is a pretty new program out there, so we don't know the total ins and outs of it yet, but that sounds like it's going to be a really great system for investors not wanting to occupy a multifamily property themselves.
Mm-hmm. And if I'm wrong, I apologize. But you've always had the ability with an FHA loan to put as little as 3.5% down on a duplex, triplex, or fourplex. And you've always had the ability with a VA loan to put 0 down. But there's a conventional loan program now through Fannie Mae, which is conventional, with as little as 5%. I apologize if I'm getting this wrong, and you still have to occupy one of those units, but I'm pretty sure I heard you don't.
That's awesome. And just to kind of touch on that a little bit, I do want to go into just leveraging yourself with real estate, because at least in the North Idaho, Eastern Washington market, it is hard to just put 5% down on something and have it make your rents in the other units. I haven't really analyzed a lot of multifamily, but definitely in the single family unit space, if you're putting down 3.5%, and your mortgage is still, I don't know, $555,000, and you try to rent that thing out for $2,100 a month, you'll rent it out for $2,100, but your mortgage payment's going to be like $3,900, so you'll lose $1,800 a month in cash flow, which is not a good investment right now.
Yeah. And something you got to be careful too is assuming that interest rates are going to go down. There's a lot of people in the industry, realtors included, mortgage people especially, that are preaching that rates are going to go down. Just get what you can right now while prices are low. They're not low. Get get what you can right now. While sellers are giving credits, they're giving credits. They have for a long time. There was a short period of time, maybe 3 years or so, where it was tougher to get a credit because we were in such a rampant sellers market. But please, guys, don't rush into this. No matter what your lenders or realtors are telling you, you will find investments out there if you're looking hard enough and if you're taking your time. You may not always just find them. You may have to put them together. You may have to make an offer that makes sense for you. And that's something that a lot of people don't realize either. They look at everything, they say there's no deals here. Well, there haven't been deals for a long time. You got to put them together. You got to make offers that make sense. And eventually, if you keep doing this, you're going to find things that make sense.
Right. The people who are making deals are basically the ones like are going out there and finding deals or giving those deals to other people. You can find them, on the MLS every now and then, but they're hard to come by. That doesn't mean they're not out there though, and that doesn't mean you should just abandon all hope at the same time because it's just a more stiff market, so to say. And you just gotta find what works a little bit more. Like 3 years ago, deals were just flinging off the shelves, right?
Yeah.
You could put a feeler out there like, hey, I'm looking for this kind of deal, and somebody somewhere in your network would have that exact deal looking for what you're doing. So yeah, definitely just got to be a little bit more careful with the market. So good to know for sure.
Yep. So let's recap what we've said so far. Your network is your net worth.
Oh, you said it. Nice job.
So network out there. I mean, you may wonder, why is that important? We've got the internet. I can just look for deals. I can look for people here. But if you're going out regularly to these meetup groups, here in North Idaho, there's, I don't know, 7 of them every month almost. And you're meeting the rock stars that are in the industry that can refer you to other rock stars. You're going to need rockstar title people, rockstar agents, rockstar lenders, rockstar contractors, rockstar insurance agents, because they're not all treated equally and not a lot of them cater to investors. But when you go to meetings like this, you'll find them and you'll find great referrals and figure out a way to offer value back to these people too, if you can.
Right. Yeah. Don't just be what they call in elementary school a bucket dipper. Because there's bucket dippers who just take things, and there's bucket fillers who, fill other people's buckets. If you're just
Indian giver, that's what I heard.
That's not the same thing, but that's okay.
That's all I heard in elementary school. I never heard bucket taker.
It might be a new thing. Aubrey will probably tell you about it for sure.
Give a penny, take a penny.
Give a penny, take a penny. That's a good analogy too.
If you're always just taking pennies, those haggard women are going to get angry at you eventually.
Yep. Speaking of pennies, this is a good segue into what I wanted to talk to next, and that's getting your savings straight. Kind of a taboo subject with investors. I do think having a solidified savings plan and not just blowing your whole entire, savings on an investment is going to be somebody starting out's best move.
Yeah, because when you do purchase real estate, the expenses are going to come out of the woodwork, and it's helpful to be able to have some sort of resources to cover expenses.
Right. Especially if you're buying an older house. Like if you're buying a brand new house or a brand new build, your expenses aren't going to be as much as you think. But if you're buying anything, 15 years or older, like there's going to be things that are just breaking in your house, and you're going to have to figure that out.
Yeah. I think you said if you're buying an older house, you're not going to have as many. If you're buying a new house.
If you're buying a newer house, I'm sorry if I misspoke on that one. If you're buying a new house, you're not going to have as many expenses. But if you are buying an older house, that might have been my mistake. I apologize.
No, that's okay. Let's talk about that real quick, though. New construction, I still feel like is an incredible opportunity to get into a house with lower maintenance. If you actually look at what's on the market, at least in North Idaho, I don't know about other markets, but newer construction is almost on par with resales. And with resales, every 15 years or so, almost everything in the house has to be replaced. And you could easily be buying something, a resale compared to a new construction with very little price difference. And yet, maybe 2-3 years down the road, you sink 50 grand into the house just doing all the things that need to be done, the mechanicals in the house, the electrical, the plumbing. You may have rot that you don't know of. The list will just go on and on and on. But new construction homes, I mean, you're solid for a long time, and if you maintain these houses well, they're meant to last.
I think that's a really good point, Nick. Obviously, like you saying, if you spend $50,000 on maintenance in the next 5 years when you buy an older house, does that negate buying a newer house that costs $25,000 more?
Well, from what I've seen, I don't know if newer construction is that much more. If you're getting a loan, you're not always feeling that right away. And you got to also look at the other expenses too, like utilities. If you're buying an older home, a home built in 1920s, there's a very good chance you don't have insulation in the walls, and your bills may be $100-$200 more a month in utilities than a new construction home. I know that I live in a 2,000 square foot home in Coeur d'Alene. It was built in 2016, 2017. And I noticed a staggering difference because just prior to that, I was living in a home built in the early 70s. That had insulation, but the heating system it was like a radiant type of ceiling heat. But we were spending on average like, I don't know, close to $300 a month just in our power on a house that was half the size. And then we upgraded to a house that was double the size, and our power bill went down by a lot. I mean, I think our average bill was like $130 throughout the year, each month. Have you noticed? I guess, Jeremy, you've always kind of lived in newer construction homes.
Yeah. Obviously, my primary residence was a newer construction back in 2021, so I haven't really noticed a difference. But it makes sense what you're saying, right? Like you have your vinyl windows that are just a little bit more energy efficient. Everything's built, and much like science and technology in general, like everything just gets better and better over time, right? So
Yeah, that place too also had older aluminum windows, and you can just feel the coldness coming right through these whole pockets in your home. But it's just another thing to consider. I mean, it's not all about the payment, because there's multiple expenses ongoing with a home, and I would really recommend kind of checking out all the different scopes of your annual expenses that you're going to run into with a home. It's worth the time to just take some time, nerd out. If you can't think of stuff off the top of your head, just go to ChatGPT and write in, "Hey, what annual expenses can I expect living in a house?"
living in a house, yeah, absolutely. I think that would do a pretty good job for that. Now, as far as like saving for, just a rainy day fund, I suppose, I do think you should have a rainy day fund, which is 6 months of savings, which is what a lot of people recommend as far as getting your savings right. But then along with that, like you don't invest out of that money. That's money that you just hold in an account. That's what we call oh shit money, basically. But you also want to have that savings like ready to buy a house or ready to buy your next investment property. So, and it sounds like a lot to like build up your nest, but I promise you, if you do these things, you'll just end up so much more successful and in a better spot, just because you took the time to build up your foundation.
Yes. Speaking of foundations, shall we, since you're newer out there listening, should we talk about the different types of homes? Do you think this is the proper podcast for that?
Yeah, let's bring it in.
Okay. So if you're not sure, you're out there shopping, you don't know what you want exactly. There's different types of floor plans, different types of foundations out there. Some of the most common homes are at least newer ones that are being built these days. They have a crawl space, meaning that underneath the subfloor, there's a space to crawl around in. That's usually, if it's a newer home, it's insulated and you have some sort of a vapor barrier that you're crawling around on. If you don't have a vapor barrier, then you probably have an older house. It's a good way to tell if you look in the crawl space. Or you can have a basement. If you have a basement in North Idaho and it's an older home, there's a good chance there might be water coming into the basement somehow. So check for that. If you have a house that's just built on a slab foundation, there's probably less, there's good and bad with that. It might be colder throughout the winter because you don't have that insulation barrier underneath you. However, there's probably not going to be dead rodents or anything running around underneath your house, less chance of bugs, those kind of things. So there's pros and cons to these three different types of foundations. You got a basement, you got a slab, and a slab means that there's nothing under you but concrete. And then a basement, of course, I'm sure almost everybody knows of that. Then there's different types of homes. When you walk into a home, this was, at least in North Idaho, this is a very common build because this used to be, for the longest time, in the 70s, 80s, 90s, a very affordable place to live. And when it came to affordable places to live, it's usually you got to have affordable type construction homes. And what they built a lot of in this area is called split entry homes. And when you walk up to a doorway and you open the front door, if you immediately have to walk upstairs or downstairs, that's called a split entry. And those floor plans were a little bit cheaper to build because the amount of roof space and lumber in the house is reduced, and they don't have to pour as much of a foundation for a basement because they're only going about halfway versus a full basement. They're going all the way. So it was a more economical home to build when it came to materials. But these floor plans can be a little bit tougher to resell. So keep that into consideration. However, they do make ideal conversions for duplexes. So there's pros and cons to that. Just know if you're going to resell a split entry, you're most likely going to be selling to a younger family who doesn't really care and they just need to get into something affordable. But your buyer pool is going to be much smaller than if you just buy something, a single story.
Sure. And that's obviously if you intend to sell, which, if you're investing for the long term, maybe that's not your play, but, sometimes you have to sell. I do want to talk a little bit, Nick, about just what you're saying about the buyer pool. So when you're getting a property that you want to have as an investment, what should people be looking at to maximize their buyer pool?
Well, it depends on where you are. So I can speak to North Idaho because that's what I know the most. I used to sell real estate in Orlando, Florida, and that was a different culture buying different types of products. But for North Idaho, which is 90% of you guys out there listening anyway, so let's just go with that. To get the biggest buyer pool in this area, you want I would say this is the most commonly easy to sell floor plan. You walk in and you have your master bedroom on the main floor on one side of the house and 2 bedrooms on the other side of the house. So there's some distance between mom and kids, mom, dad, and kids. And we're talking about a single story here. And then you have a 3-car garage. Because we're in North Idaho, we have many different seasons. 4 of them, last I checked. And people in Idaho, if they've lived here long enough, they start accumulating a lot of stuff for different times of the year. They'll have all their ski equipment or whatever, 4-wheelers and stuff for the fall time, winter time, maybe a bunch of snow shovels, that kind of stuff. They'll have their toys for the summer, their different items for the spring, taking care of lawns and all that stuff. But it's a really good idea if you want a very sellable floor plan. If you have a 3-car garage or more, or a shop is a gold. That's just gold, having a shop in North Idaho. And making sure the floor plan is very suitable for most people. Most people would buy a house that's 1,200 square feet or more that has a master bedroom on one side of the house and then the other 2 or 3 bedrooms on the other side of the home.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think that kind of goes into, just doing your market research. Obviously, you can attest to what North Idaho does and what North Idaho wants. But if you're not in this area, I do think just getting in touch with a realtor or maybe 2 or 3 and just telling them what you're trying to do. Like, hey, I'm trying to buy and sell houses. So obviously you're trying to build a relationship with them, hoping that they use you to sell. But just ask them, like, what is the median price point in the area, right? Like what kind of number should I be looking at if I'm getting a flip? What kind of floor plans are selling? What kind of just ask the questions, because the worst thing they can do is not answer you. But most people want your business, so they're going to answer your questions.
Yeah. And going a little bit deeper on like ideal floor plans, because I think this is actually important, because not a lot of real estate investors or newbies, or, if you're going to fix and flip houses, or if you're going to build a spec home to rent it out one day, there are some things that you're going to want to consider that maybe you don't know if you don't deal with buyers all the time. The master bathroom is very important. You're going to want to, these days, a lot of buyers that are paying anything more than the affordable price point, and the affordable price point here is ridiculous, but an ideal selling floor plan would have in the a master bathroom with an ensuite, and that ensuite should have 2 sinks, double vanity. If it doesn't have one and you're fixing and flipping a property, consider getting one. You want at least 6 feet of room there on one wall to put 2 vanities. The longer, the better. Because sometimes you can have a very short wall and you can still fit 2 vanities, but then there's no space for the wife to put her hair dryer and her curling iron and her straightening iron and her basket of towels and all these things. And this is stuff that, the wife is typically the one making the decision if they're going to buy a house or not, if they're walking through, or if they're going to rent a house or not. And that those are some of the biggest areas of the house that they spend the most time in, standing in front of the mirror in the master bathroom and hanging out in the kitchen. In the kitchen, you should have a nice big island, and you should have that triangle effect where if you're rebuilding a kitchen, don't do it off the top of your head. Hire somebody like a kitchen guy to come in, take measurements, and give you recommendations on what should go where, because that can get complicated, and you don't want to screw up the kitchen. I've seen flippers do that, where they just make things not ideal because they're trying to save money or do it themselves or do what they would like. But if your intentions are to rent it out or to resell it, you should really make those 2 items a priority.
Yeah. And just kind of touching onto your contractor point here for just a minute, Nick, I am going to say, unless you are a certified contractor, you should be subbing out all of your work in your house. If you're flipping or renovating or anything like that, unless you are a good contractor with years of experience, don't touch it, to be honest with you. Like, yes, it might cost you more money to have a contractor come in and do this stuff, but it's going to be done right, and you're not going to have to redo it after you mess it up.
Yeah. Or at the minimum, hire a contractor that doesn't mind you hanging out and helping, maybe to save on cost. My brother and I did that when we first started flipping homes. We hired a absolutely great contractor, and we were basically like his assistant. We're like, hey, what do you need? We want to learn from you and hang out, and it also made the job much more less expensive, because 80% of contracting work is prep work, and if you can help with the prep and cleanup, then that contractor can get so much more done. If you're sitting there helping, or if you and somebody else maybe going to get materials that are needed. Now we're talking contractor hacks or flipping hacks, but
which is good to know for sure. So
yeah, we can have a whole show about just house flipping hacks.
Right. Maybe we need to have one of those. Yeah, and like I said, my point with that too is obviously, like, yes, it'll cost you more money to have a contractor, but I do agree with what you said there, Nick. Like, if you can find a contractor who doesn't mind if you hang out and learn a couple things and, maybe go do those dump runs or Home Depot runs for them, that keeps them working longer, and then you get this first world experience where you get to see how it's done, and there is so much value to that.
Yeah. And if you have a contractor that doesn't like the idea of you helping with prep and cleanup, I think you got the wrong contractor.
Right. Good news is you can hire more than one. And if nobody's working, and if your contractor is not working for you, you can fire them.
Yes. Or just ghost them, like most people in North Idaho. It's becoming a trend, apparently, which is just frustrating the heck out of me.
You've got your own problems to deal with. This is for the new people. The new people aren't going to be experiencing your problems unless they do what you do, and we're trying to make sure they don't.
Yeah, don't do what I do.
Don't do what Nick does. Do what Nick says.
Learn from my mistakes, people.
Yeah, and we've got past episodes on this too. I know Nick did. We did an episode of the fall and rise of Nick Beveridge. He goes into a lot of his hardships that he's had with real estate investing, and he goes into how he's overcoming them. It's a great episode if you haven't heard it. One of my favorite episodes we've done, actually, just because it's so intimate and sincere, and you're vulnerable. And I think that stuff is very important when you're doing this type of business. Like, people go to these networking meetings, and I'm not saying this because people are liars or anything, but people typically talk about like everything they've done great. You don't ever hear people say that like, hey, I really messed up this project and I need help.
Yeah. Well, I mean, telling people that everything I've done is great doesn't really do anything. Like, it doesn't even feel good saying that. I don't know. But I think the way people can really, I mean, all when you buy real estate and hold on to it, you're going to do great. 90% of it is the things not to do. and try to learn from that.
Right. And I agree with you for sure. So if you're buying real estate to hold on to it, like there's really no way you can lose as long as you can make your mortgage payments, right? And there's plenty of different ways to do that with getting rentals in there. I even think house hacking is just a great way to get started if you were to get into real estate investing. Just get a house. If you're a single person, get roommates. Doesn't even have to be a duplex or triplex. Just get roommates, have them pay your bills.
And I don't think it's just a great strategy. I think it's like the strategy to get in. I absolutely firmly believe that. I think I think you're a brilliant person if that's where you start. And if hey, I want to start investing in real estate, that's how you do it. I mean, that's how you start. You start by practicing with your own home, and I think it's brilliant to sacrifice a little bit of privacy and get some rooms rented out. Then you get the practice of dealing. What is it like dealing with tenants? Because this is a long game and it takes a long time to understand how people operate in this world. And if you could just start small with renting one bedroom at a time, and then go from there, this snowball will get bigger as it rolls down the hill.
Right. And it definitely starts with that first property, like you're saying too. So just do your research, learn what you want to do, get hyper focused on how you want to do it, and then just execute your plan. It doesn't have to be overcomplicated, and I think that's something people get confused at a lot as well. This business does not have to be complicated. Is it hard sometimes? Yes. Is it complicated? No.
No. And I think we should dive into more specifics on like exactly what people should be doing, because they're like, okay, I've heard this before. Yes, I should be networking. I should be buying properties and I should be buying good deals. But like, where do I start? Here's an easy way to start. Just call a real estate agent and tell them what your goals are. And if they don't perform some sort of action where they start sending you properties, or they want you to meet with them in person to talk more, or they don't say, hey, get in my car, let's go check out this house, try to find another agent. In North Idaho, we have like 2,000 or something like that. There's a lot to pick from.
I think like 1,900 was the last time I checked, but I'm assuming it's 2,000. So,
and myself and my team, that's what we do. I don't know if I've sold myself enough yet on this podcast, but we love to help inspiring investors or seasoned investors find and sell properties. We way more prefer to do that than to try to prospect for people that hate real estate agents but just feel like they have to use them to buy or sell a house. We would prefer to work with people that we can do multiple deals with. Hey, we want to be a part of helping you get wealthy. And for now, I guess laws might be changing on this. For now, if you're using a real estate agent to buy properties, it's free. However, there's lawsuits going on right now that may all change real soon. Have you heard of that, Jeremy?
I think we briefly talked about it, but you're more than welcome to bring it back up because I think that's quite fascinating stuff, to be honest with you.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess you're always the buyer does, in fact, pay for the commission because you're buying the house, and it does come out of the seller's proceeds. But if the seller wasn't paying that commission, maybe they can get higher for the price, but or a little bit more for the house. Who knows? That's all theory. But the reality is, right now, you have the ability to utilize the services of a professional for free. And I don't know any other industry where you can do that and have somebody else bear the expense of having somebody kind of work for you on your behalf. It's a pretty cool tool. You don't have to hire a real estate agent or fire a real estate agent. There's no such thing. It's not like you have this company and you got them on payroll for a little bit, and then if they don't do what you want, you send them, send them a pink slip. That's not what you're doing. You're simply getting the opportunity to have somebody work on your behalf for free for now. That could easily be changing because I think Remax and Realogy have just settled with this class action lawsuit saying that they're going to change their practices, because what happened was there's this big class action lawsuit where a bunch of attorneys got together and they're like, hey, let's get some money from the real estate industry and let's send a mailer to all these people that sold homes and say, hey, were you forced to pay a buyer's agent? And they got a lot of people to think that they were forced into paying a buyer's agent by their list agent, even though they had an agreement to, if they wanted to list their home, they're going to pay a certain amount of commission, and that listing agent is going to split that commission with whoever brings a qualified buyer with an offer that the seller agrees with. I mean, there's not a lot of force going on here. It was very volunteer, but that's not the way this is turning out. A lot of people thought it was a joke a couple of years ago when this class action lawsuit started. But these big real estate companies like Realogy, Remax, they're starting to settle and saying to the public that they are going to potentially change their practices and not offer compensation anymore to a buyer's agent, which means now if you're a buyer out there, you potentially are just not going to have any representation, and it's going to be more like you're just going to a store and giving it your best with the real estate agent that is only serving the best interest of a seller, not you.
Right. That makes it pretty weird, I think. So with that kind of lawsuit thing, would the seller's agent typically, obviously I think it's 6%. I'm not sure if that's nationwide or not.
It's pretty common throughout the
Very common.
nation.
Okay. So 3% to the buyer's agent, 3% to the seller's agent. Would the seller's agent be taking the 6%, or would the whole thing be reduced down to 3% from there?
So when it comes to 3%, 6%, all this percentage, everything's negotiable. There's no set practice. It's just common to be able to get about that much compensation. It's just a typical charge. Agents typically feel like they've done enough work for their broker to receive 3% for each side. Now, if they can no longer pay buyer's agents, and they're going to have to deal with buyers, I don't imagine that listing agents are going to be dropping their fees to 3% because they just took on a lot more work. Not only do they have to list, market, and push out a property to the world, but they now have to screen buyers but mentor a buyer through this process, show a buyer this house, and go through a contract with the buyer, but not represent them.
Yeah, but still be allegiant to the seller? That's kind of weird, huh?
So buyers are going to potentially, and this is all theory here, but if they want the service of a real estate agent, they may have to pay. They may have to, on their dime, pay a real estate agent 3%, and it's just another cost for a buyer in this world to consider if they want some sort of representation, or if they want a buyer or an agent work on their behalf. But we'll see how this all plays out.
Sure. It feels like it's making it harder for the average buyer to actually just buy a home. If like, you would think with all the people not able to afford a mortgage right now or able to afford any sort of investment, like, they would drop the barrier, not raise it.
It's unfortunate because I feel like this is because attorneys wanted to do this money grab, and it may change the entire industry. I don't know if it's for the better or for the worse, but you know what? It's all been volunteer. The way this system is set up it's been working over time.
And it's been this way for a long time, right?
It's been this way for a long time. And there's a reason why listing brokers want to share half of their commission voluntarily with another broker. And it's because they're putting a bounty up. That's what a lot of people don't understand with the MLS. When you list your home with a real estate agent in North Idaho, for instance, and they are a realtor with the MLS access and when they list your home on this platform, and they put a bounty out of 3% that they're paying to a buyer's agent. Now you've just enlisted, like you've just basically hired 2,000 agents to bring the highest and best offer.
Yeah, to close your bounty, basically.
Yeah. Without that, I don't know how things are going to work. I mean, buyers are still going to want to buy homes, but if there's no bounty out there or incentive to help them, other than just the listing agent, it's probably just going to be the listing agent that will charge more and just have to hire more people in house. I think the listing agents are going to be just fine, and they're probably just going to have their workload go way up, and maybe they're just going to have to start hiring buyers agents on their team or as employees or whatever. And this is all theory, and this may actually be good for the industry too, because the bar is pretty low for real estate agents to get their license. And this may filter out a lot of people that aren't really good at their job and can't even get listings.
Right. And that's the point I was going to make too. So obviously, just in our market in general, I know there's buyers agents and there's listing agents, right? How many of the agents in our area would you say are specific listing agents, like the doers in the industry doing, you know, anywhere between 3 and 15 listings a year?
3 and 15 listings a year. I mean, I can go back and look. If I just had to guess, I don't know, a couple hundred, maybe 10%.
How many of them are doing zero deals a year?
I know the majority in our market are doing one or less a year.
That's I think it's going to make some interesting stuff in the future for sure on that. But I do want to just kind of circle back to just having an agent, obviously, like you said. So if you have these questions, while you can, you should be talking to a realtor.
Yeah, while they're free.
Right. While they're free, right?
Honestly, it may not be that way.
Yeah, it might not. So like I said, take advantage of it while you can for sure. I want to talk about, obviously, so you work in North Idaho, but you take referrals, right? So if somebody said, like, I want to buy a house in, I don't know, Kansas City, right? Could you help them find a listing agent or a buyer's agent over there?
Yeah, totally. And I think I'm more qualified than them to find the right person, just because I have, like, Kansas City's a big market. They're going to have Keller Williams offices, and I have a really cool platform called KW Command, and it has this referrals option where I can look up agents by production. And let's say somebody wants to buy a house in Kansas City, buy, not list. I can look up, like, in their submarket, who are the top agents that have done the most buyer transactions, and I can separate them out, like buyers versus listings. Are they on a team or not? And I can come up with like 3 really solid rock stars, and then I can call each one, which is I've done plenty of times in the past. I'll call each one, and I'm only going to consider who gets back to me within 2 hours or who answers their phone. If somebody takes longer than 2 hours to get back with me, I'm not giving them that referral. And then but typically, just by doing that, it's almost always the first person I call. They answer the phone right away. They're very professional. They seem like they know what they're doing, and
That's what happens when you call the top dogs first, right?
Yeah, that's what happens when you go right to the rock stars. And rock stars work with rock stars. So if you get me to help you find that person, it's very likely that rock star starts working with you is going to refer you other rock stars.
Right. And it's just great. Obviously, you would take a referral fee or whatever off the top, but that doesn't come out of the buyer's profit. But
no, for now they don't have to pay for it.
Right. But the amount of like work that you can do in the network you have in order to find these top dogs and rock stars is like, it's amazing, right? Because you can literally be, if somebody called you and just said, hey, I want this, like, you know exactly where to look. You know exactly who's running the show there. And you can just streamline this whole process for them and use your real estate agents for the things you need is basically all I wanted to say on that. So,
and the reason I'm able to do it so easily is just because I've done it many times before. You usually get better at what you practice. And I've been an agent now for 13 years, and I've done a lot of referrals back and forth around the country. And I've kind of narrowed down my system of trying to find that right agent in the right market. So, but I don't want to brag. We can change topics. But if you are not in North Idaho, you're listening to this and you actually want me to help you find an agent, I would love to. It would really help our show out, really, because we don't have any other ways of making income other than that and lending hard money. Do you want to talk about lending hard money for a minute?
Yeah, I mean, we can. Just with
You never like to.
what? Yeah, I would like to, of course. Obviously, the show's geared towards the person that it hasn't quite invested yet and wants to get their feet wet and do so. Like with an investment, a hard money lender is going to be a really good resource for you for sure. What we can do is like I have my boots on the ground, at least in this market, where I can tell you like if you bring me a deal and you say I've got this thing under contract, what can you do, right? I can tell you within probably 5 or 10 minutes, like, all right, we're looking pretty good on numbers or we're pretty far off on numbers, and it just depends on what kind of deal you bring me at that point.
Totally. You have help analyzing a real estate flip.
Right. Exactly. Like I've been in the market. I know what sells up here. I know what the median price point is. I know what people are looking for, and you get a free analyst of a deal basically if you call me with it, and it's great.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's something I noticed too when I was first started flipping homes. I think on my second house, we got it was my first home. We got a hard money loan. But when I was starting to analyze other deals, I can just call my hard money lender and run it by him. And if he was iffy on doing a loan, there were red flags that he told me why. And I was like, oh, great. I'm glad I ran this by you. If a hard money lender is iffy about a loan, there's a good chance it's probably not a good deal and you should move on.
Like they're in the business to make deals. And if they don't want to make the deal, there has to be a reason why.
Exactly. They want to lend money.
Right. It's either because your down payment isn't enough, or it's either because the property itself doesn't make sense. And we've seen this a couple times where, we're trying to lend on something, but it has a lot of soil damage from, it used to be an old gas station, so it's got soil contamination or whatever. That's stuff we consider when we're doing a loan. And it's good to know, because if you're buying a property and you had no idea any of that stuff existed, well, now you know, right? Before you go out of contract, like, oh, this is not exactly what I thought. Obviously, like the things hard money lenders or hard money brokers want to lend on are real property for sure. So nothing in like a mobile home trailer park or anything like that. I'm sure you could find a hard money lender with that, but typically a hard money lender wants the property attached to the land. Is that right, Nick?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they don't want to lend on cars.
Right. They don't want to lend on cars. They don't want to lend on DMV things with titles or anything like that.
With high monthly lot rents. Because if you're, and if you're confused, why won't this hard money lender just give me a loan on this trailer? I'm buying it undervalued. Well, you're buying a car on leased land. That's probably a bigger job than you think.
Right. It's hard to foreclose on stuff like that too. Not like we want to do that, but we have to cover our bases. And I will go on a limb and say hard money loans are not for people who don't have any money. It is not a way to get around not having a down payment for, a conventional loan. It's made specifically for you to do value add to your property, typically short term, so within 12 to 24 months usually. It's usually a wham bam, thank you ma'am. We get you the loan. We can even fund the rehab on most things. But it's not for people who don't have any money. This is not a workaround if you're broke.
Yeah. And it's not something to move into either. Hard money lenders typically aren't, and I should preface this with, like, at least our company, we can't do loans on owner-occupied properties. But you shouldn't be getting hard money loans on that kind of stuff anyway.
Yeah, you shouldn't be. It breaks the Dodd-Frank Act and everything like that. But what you can do, obviously, is if you wanted to rehab a property and then refinance into a conventional or FHA loan once you're done with our loan, that's something we definitely think that's a really good idea. But yeah, it's just not for people who don't have money. You should have some money. You should have some money stayed away. So like we talked about earlier, your kind of oh crap fund, just in case anything goes wrong. We're not in the business of foreclosing on properties. That's not what we want to do. We really want to help you get this project going and get it finished. And in order to get it finished, we need good securities and we need good communication, basically.
Yes. So if anyone's out there just wondering, since we only got a few minutes left, okay, I get what you're saying, but I'm stuck. Like, this market is hard. Prices are expensive. Interest rates are crazy. Okay, I'm going to have a recommendation then. Let's say you don't have 50 to 100 grand to put down on a property as a primary investment to get the mortgage down lower than what the rents would cover. Consider fixing and flipping a house then. If you can find a deal that's 70% or less of the after repair value, subtract the repair cost. So let's say, for simple numbers' sake, you're buying a property that is worth $100,000 when it's all fixed up. We're doing simple math here.
Yeah, very simple.
The property is going to be worth 100 grand after you fix it up. You take that 100,000, multiply it by 70%. So in your calculator, do 0.7, multiply it by 0.7, and then you get 70,000. And then take off your repair costs. My contractor said it's going to cost 25 grand. Okay, subtract 30 grand because your contractor is going to be a few thousand off maybe. So you take off the 30 grand, you're at 50. Now, your maximum allowable offer on this flip should be 50.
You're at 40, by the way.
Oh, yep, you're right. Sorry, 40. So your maximum allowable offer should be 40,000 or less. Let's say you buy that property for 40,000 or less, and you have $10,000 saved up. You can probably use that as your skin in the game, and then there's enough margin for a hard money loan in that scenario. You fix up the house, you sell it, you make, 20, 30 grand, whatever it is, and then you may have enough for the down payment of a duplex. And then you take that money and you go buy a duplex, you move into one side, you rent out the other, and you start your real estate journey from there.
And you're off to the races. One thing I will say, obviously, with people that don't have money and they really want to get into this business, but you're hungry, right? And you want to work and you want to either find deals or you want to help rehab or you want to, help with wholesaling. Don't be afraid to partner with people. And we could do whole shows on partnerships too, but like you can find a money partner who's willing to, lend on that, not lend, partner with that down payment that you need for either the hard money loan or a conventional loan. And then once you refi and fix it up, you pay your partner back, pay them their profits because they're going to be splitting in that. And like, I think Brandon Turner says it all the time, like 50% of a deal's better than 0% of 100% of deals.
Yeah, totally. And then something else you can bring up too, like, gosh, what if I just don't even have the money to get started on a flip, an extra 10 grand? Jeremy, when you wanted to get involved with a flip with me, I told you should really have 20 grand. And you were able to, over time, save up 10, but you needed another 10. And what were you doing? You were selling you were selling basketball cards, and you were just kind of selling your stuff to come up with the money. And you came up with it pretty quickly because you had a reason for it and you had a goal.
And you gave me a target to achieve for. Like I know I bugged you a lot. I'm like, how can I get in? How could I get in? You gave me that 20 grand number. I was halfway there. I'm like, okay, I'm halfway to my goal. All I need to do is just grind a little bit harder and either make more money or figure out how to make 10 grand. And I did that very quickly because I was motivated. And that's going to speak volumes to your partners as well. Like your motivation level. If you'd have told me like, hey, get 10 grand, right? And then, maybe 3 years later, I've got an extra 10 grand. You're like, well, did you really want it?
Yes. It's amazing what can happen when you have a vision and you can work your ass off.
Yep. And have a target to shoot for. I think that's a really good thing to kind of almost end on. And that kind of goes with get a plan going. Like, what do you want to do in this industry? And you can almost work backwards from that. So say I want to partner on a flip. How do I want to partner? Do I want to bring the money? Great. How do I need to bring the money? I figure out a way to bring the money. Or do I want to find the deals? Great. What do I need to do to start finding deals? And start working backwards from those goals so you can take your little micro steps to achieve them.
Yep. Have a vision too. If your vision is, this time, 1 year, 2 years from now, I want to be moving out of a duplex that I don't have yet and filling it with another tenant, and then it will be cash flowing positive, and I will buy a house just for myself. If you have that vision, and it's going to be a lot easier for you over time to make quick decisions and work your ass off to get it. But if you have no vision, you're going to be stuck like everybody else for a long time until life just eventually happens to you.
I think that's great. Nick, do you have any final closing thoughts on this episode? I think this was going to be really beneficial for a lot of people, actually.
Yeah. If you're still confused, feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to help you out. We're not kidding. We're real people, and we have like nothing to do.
That's a joke. We've always got plenty to do, but we can always fit more on our plate. And the whole business of this thing is we get a lot of enjoyment out of helping people. And I know I'm only speaking for myself, but I think I'm speaking for you too there. My favorite thing about doing this is helping other people succeed. Most of the time, I don't even charge for my advice. I help you think of something or think outside the box, and maybe I get your mind going in a way that you didn't think could go.
I would beg to differ that you've never charged for your advice, because I don't think I've ever gotten an invoice.
I should be sending you bills and invoices. No. But you've given me advice too. And like I said, like we're all in this together. I hate to be the cliche guy there, but we're all in this together. And it takes a village sometimes to invest. So get your village, get your tribe.
Hell yeah. All right, everybody. Let's do some cheering on this outro, huh?
I love it. Let's do some cheering.
Here it comes. Everybody.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We appreciate
See you next
all.
Week. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening and thanks for watching, everyone.
See you next week. Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
No, thank you. Really, thank you.
Really got to get going.
We're past our hour mark.
Our editor's going to get mad.
Super angry.
Yep. Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Bye.
All right. We're done. No, it's not funny. It's not funny.
It's not. It's really not.
Stop laughing. Okay. That's enough.
Nobody
We're done.
listens to us.
See ya.
Thank you so much for checking out the Investor Shed podcast. If you enjoyed your time, make sure to leave a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Follow along on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram at The Investor Shed for shorts and promos about each episode. Do you want to be a guest or know someone who has great real estate investing advice and stories? Reach out to us at theinvestorshed@gmail.com.